marked differences in technique between Perry and the state auditors when they conduct the audit?
I think every audit team has different techniques that they use. What you see with an independent auditor is they spend less time on site and more time back in the office. They run a lot more analytic procedures based on reports that we give them versus pulling individual transactions sitting out at your entity. And it's just an efficiency and just kind of a methodology standpoint that they take. They're all held to the same auditing standards, though, and they have to find a way to meet those no matter what method they choose.
Is there any wisdom in having the state do an audit once and then we have the private contractor do it and circle back and have the state come back in? Is there any rationale for that?
Well, the state has a rule that you can only be out with an independent firm for 10 years, and then you have to go back to the state for at least 1 year. So at the end of this contract,
so it does
we would have
recognize
to.
that there is a value in having the state auditors look at it.
They do every so often because, again, they do hold the power over those audits, so they like to get them back in at least once every 10 years.
So really, it's kind of up to us to decide whether we think it's prudent to have the state in on something shorter than a 10-year cycle.
Well, you can ask the state to come in, rather than using an independent, but it is up to the state. You don't get to choose. Ultimately, if they say it's going to be bid out to an independent based on their workload, that's what they do.
Okay.
Thank you.
Since it's really not our choice, we'll move on.
I think
Okay.
excuse me just a moment. That is an important note, and it really is not our choice.
It's not.
Right. No, they have the contracting authority. They do that on our behalf. And just a kind of side note on procedure, I know we've been kind of going around and kind of saying, yes, we're all in agreement with moving something to the agenda since we don't have committee reports any longer. And I don't know that we did that on item A.
Do you need it all in favor?
Well, not necessarily that, but just, we had kind of gone around the table
I think what
the past
we
several
need to do
meetings.
for the transcription is to note that we need to note two things. Number one is we need to note each individual from the administration who's present, the administrative team, at the beginning of the meeting, just like we would if we were completing the form. The second is that we should indicate that we do have the votes on any particular item to move forward because you're authorizing legislation. So we need to have some expression of authorization.
Might be easier for the chair just to ask if anyone is opposed to it moving forward.
Do you want me to go back to A?
Just to be safe.
Okay. So when we were talking about under finance and property, or under A, an agreement with the Stark County local government funds, were there any issues about moving forward? Okay, no issues. We'll move forward. Under ordinance, or under B, an agreement between the Board of Control to enter into professional services with the Auditor of State and Perry and Associates. Were there any concerns or issues to not move forward? Okay, again, we'll move forward. And C is an appropriation for $121,000 on East Hill. And we have already, the total funding for the project is $203,000. $82,000 has already been appropriated, and we're requesting another $121,000 to continue that payment so that East Hill can be done. Rob, any issues or concerns?
None whatsoever. It's
Okay.
very good news. We had applied for municipal road funds for East Hill, and typically we're awarded $75,000, $80,000, depends. This year they gave us $203,000.
Wow,
So yeah,
that's great.
very good.
Well, that's great news. Okay, any questions or concerns about moving forward?
No.
All right, then we will move forward.
All right, thank you. And before we get started, ordinance rules claims, Chairman Revolt, just to your point earlier, everyone here from the management or from administrative team is present.
Yes.
Member Revolt?
Okay, we have two items for consideration. First is the annual adoption of replacement for our codified ordinances. As maybe before we move on, or before I go to Laura, these changes reflect changes in the state code. which are incorporated in our codified ordinances, and then also our changes that we have made in our own ordinances as well that are codified. One of the questions that always comes up is what's the technique involved in making sure that we've got everything, and Laura and I believe we have swept everything in. Laura, would you describe the process your team went through to prepare this for Drain?
Sure. At the conclusion of our July 8th meeting, we went back and made a list of all the ordinances that had gone through council for the past year, because the last time we sent things to be codified was last July of 18. So we created a list of all ordinances and then went through and identified those that impact the codified ordinances. Some things do not, such as budget, a contract, a purchase, but some things do. So once we had our list, then we ran that past the law director to get another set of eyes on it, and then sent that up to the drain company who helps us with this process, and went back and forth with him to get all the language up to him. Once we received the printed copies, I had our intern, Ben Nist, go through, and you can see he placed all the little tabs in here as he verified to each signed ordinance what was in here. Once he did that, then I double-checked his work, and so we had 2 sets of eyes go through this. Just at the end of last week, Drain also got this onto the website, so today we started going through and verifying that all the language on the website matches this and matches the signed legislation, and we have 1 more left to go, but everything looked good so far.
Are there any questions?
One other note, if I could, there were also a few ordinances from past years, from before the July 18 to July of 19 period, that the law director had found didn't get included in prior years, and so we sent those up to Drain
Those are
as well,
swept in as well.
and those have been incorporated.
Does council have any questions or comment? Is there anyone who is opposed to moving forward with this legislation? Okay, we'll have it on the agenda for next Monday. Item 2 is to that point of changing our codified ordinances. Our current codified ordinance states that we're going to meet at North Canton City Hall. We are at the Civic Center. So item B is an amendment that reflects the place of our meeting, and it will be changed to the Civic Center. And I might note, Pat, I think you and your team have done a nice job getting the place set up. It's beautiful. Organized.
I second that. Wonderful.
So, if there are no objections, I'd like to have this placed on the agenda for emergency.
Sounds good.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Darrell. Okay, next up, Street and Alley, Chairman Fonte.
Yes, this is the annual bridge inspection program that ODOT is actually paying 100% for. And the 2 bridges in question they want to peek at is East Hill and Glenwood. And, you know, it's like for the next